This is Why Small Business Matters from Northumbria University, supporting small businesses with the Help to Grow management programme.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Why Small Business Matters. My name is Matt Sutherland, and in today's episode we explore the world of finance and hear more about the dedicated assistance on offer here in the UK to support small businesses survive, prosper and grow.
And it's trying to make sure that you're matching the right finance at the right time with the right need. So it's kind of, what do you need the money for? Quite often that will lead you to the answer of, okay, what's the right sort of finance?
That was the voice of Richard Bearman, Co-Chief Banking Officer at the British Business Bank. Founded in 2014, the British Business Bank is a dedicated economic development bank owned by the Department for Business and Trade, yet maintains operational independence to best support small firms. Richard has over 25 years of experience in the banking sector, and as Co-Chief Banking Officer at the British Business Bank, Richard oversees the new relationship management function, which will help support the service of consistent and holistic approach towards the bank's delivery partners. Prior to this, Richard was UK Head of Small Business at HSBC. Welcome to the podcast. Lovely to see you today, Richard. I've been looking forward to having you on the podcast and, of course, hearing more about the important work of the British Business Bank. But maybe it's quite a sensible place to start to really frame the question, why do small businesses matter?
As small businesses matter, it's almost a cliche to say they're the lifeblood of the economy, but I think they are. I mean, ultimately, all big businesses were once small businesses. All businesses start, even the superstar businesses all come from being a small business. But they really, it's where, to my mind, the innovation and creativity comes from. Yes, they employ a huge number of people, generate a huge amount of sort of economic sort of impact. But for me, it's that creative and innovation that really is essential for a good, well-running economy. But it's also what creates sort of the jobs of the future, the tech of the future, the innovations, or just simply those little bright ideas about how to make something better, more efficient, or frankly, more enjoyable. So yeah, I've spent a long time working with small businesses, and frankly, I love them. So
for anybody, Richard, who hasn't heard about the British Business Bank, can you give us a flavour of what you do?
Yeah, so we are effectively the UK's economic development bank. So we are owned by the government. We are an agency, sort of government, if you put it that way, and we're here to support the UK's SMEs. So to make sure the UK SMEs are able to get funding, and particularly in the areas where perhaps the mainstream industry is not working as well as it could do. We've just basically got probably the best way is there's four kind of key objectives that we have. It is to drive economic growth. It's to back innovation, to unlock potential, and to play a part to build the modern green economy. So it's important for us that we're obviously working through our partners to get funds out to SMEs, but also important to us what we call sort of additionality, that in some way we are doing more than just providing funding. So in some way where there's something additional in terms of what we're doing.
And for those who haven't come across the British Business Bank, where would they find you? So you're owned by the Department for Business and Trade. This is something which is purely online.
Yeah, so we are physically, our head office is in Sheffield. So we head office in Sheffield, and we also have an office in London. We're not a huge organisation. We're sort of, let's round figures, let's say sort of 600 or so folk. We operate through partnerships. So where I kind of often think about it is a lot of how we operate is a bit like a franchise. We work with the financial service industry from the largest sort of high street banks all the way through to sort of CDFIs, the challenger banks, that fintechs, the whole industry. And so we quite often are a little bit in the background in the sense that we are providing the supply and support into those organizations to allow them to do other things. Now, we do have what we call the Finance Hub. So on our website, we have the Finance Hub, which is where entrepreneurs can come in and almost like explain what they're looking for, and we'll try and direct them to our relevant partner that ultimately has the funds for the organization.
And you're actually sort of like a strategic conduit, aren't you? You're sort of playing that middle person role where you're working with your partners to be able to get the best results and access to the small firms. Can you give me some of your sort of, a sense of how impactful you've been since coming about in 2014?
So, I mean, we have had our sort of 10th anniversary or 10th birthday, and we've had a sort of an impact report done. And I think the sort of the quick and easy is there's a lot of impact. But I think the sort of things that, the big picture stuff is, sort of funds flow. So the funds that we've either directly, invested, so funds that are directly flowed through us, or quite a lot of time where we've sort of always drawn other funds in. And a lot of what we do is sort of working with to try and create scenarios where, if, for example, we may well, if it on the investment arm of the bank, so where we are doing investment, it may well be that we try and be that cornerstone or the first investor in, and then almost draw others in. But the funds flow we create is about 32 billion. So sort of huge amount of money that's flowed into businesses that wouldn't have flowed in otherwise. But then at sort of the other end of the spectrum, that when we talk about that additionality I was mentioning earlier, again, I'll use startup loans as an example because it's probably the easiest to sort of to talk through. Although startup loans is actually a scheme where you have a higher level of business failure, actually the way that sort of we do an evaluation is you look at the wider economic impact. And so for startup loans, for every pound that's spent on the startup loans, between £5.50 to £5.60 of economic value is created. And that's through essentially the fact that there's a whole host of sort of economic impacts if you are creating businesses that they themselves are then creating revenue, tax, employment, et cetera, et cetera. So at a very simple level, the schemes have that huge additional impact, but actually on a big scale, 32 billion pounds of funds have flowed into SMEs.
A lot of the barriers, of course, faced by small firms are the same as big firms, but just on a different scale. And we know that a lot of the barriers of the small firms that we work with really sit around kind of market uncertainty and, of course, finance. In 2014, the British Business Bank was formed. Why was there a need to create this institution or this entity?
A lot of the formation of the bank came out of the crisis back in sort of 2008. So it was the realization of the government of the day that actually there needed to be an organization that's really focused on economic development, focusing on how we make sure that SMEs get access to finance. And really it's our role to try and observe and try and find the areas where the financial service system isn't quite working. So where are the gaps? Where are the failures on occasion? But where are the gaps? How can we work with the system, work with the financial service industry to try and fill those gaps, trying to make sure that funds flow to businesses at the right time. And if for whatever reason it's not quite working, to play our part to get that money into those businesses needed to allow them to sort of start, scale up and grow.
I wonder if you can give us a sense, thanks Richard, of those gaps. Where were the holes that the British Business Bank identified that they had to plug to support small firm lending?
One example would be startup loans. So one of the products we have is startup loans, where startups are high risk. They are high. A lot of startups fail, unfortunately, and so as it's a high risk area for a bank or a sort of a financial service organization to put money into, but also for a startup, quite often it takes quite a lot of time to work with the entrepreneur to sort of get them credit ready. So it's not just the risk of sort of business failure and losing the money, but also it's quite a commitment of time and energy to work with the entrepreneur. And so it is difficult for a startup business to access funding. So there is a gap there. And so we have the startup loans product and the startup loans sort of service that tries to fill that gap, both in terms of getting funds to startup businesses to help them sort of start and grow in the early stage of their life, but also to give them the support to sort of work out, is funding right for them? Actually, how's it going to work? Is it affordable? Actually work on that business plan so that, one, we know the money's going into the right place and it's affordable, but also to give them that bit of support to help them on that journey. And then, frankly, we also support them once they've got the loan to give them the best chance of success.
So I think I'm right in thinking that lots of the small firms that have an appetite to grow will want access to finance. But going to the high street, again, just keeping it really transparent, there is finance available, but it's not as holistic maybe as the small firm would need. Is it just simply the finance? But the British Business Bank offers, well, through the startup loans, offers kind of more more support. I don't want to say pastoral support, but more governance alongside the money.
Yeah, definitely. So some of the products we have at the bank are purely around the finance, and a lot of the time a lot of our products, we almost sit in the background. So we will work through other financial service organizations by creating an instrument or creating a product that allows them to deliver funds they wouldn't otherwise be able to provide, or deliver in a different way, or perhaps a different pricing. But with startup loans, very specifically, it's really important the entrepreneur gets support as well as the money. Sometimes it is just the money that they need and they don't take the support, but we believe, and there's good evidence that particularly in that early stage, that if you make sure that the support is there, then they've just got a much better chance of success. And pastoral, I've never heard it called pastoral, but I think it's quite a good way of putting it, actually. It is that sort of wrap-round support that one gives the individual confidence on the way in. Because a big part of it is you've got entrepreneurs that either started a business and they're that early stage, or they're thinking about it. And it's that kind of confidence to take the leap and think, okay, I probably do need some funds. I haven't either got, might not have my own funds or friends or family or what have you. I sort of need something, but it's a big step. It's a big step to launch. And so by spending time with the business advisors, that sort of actually builds that confidence going, yep, it feels right. I've got a sense that this is going to be affordable. The business is viable. Yeah, I can take that plunge.
It's absolutely terrific. And I think there will be people who we know who might say, well, this is very good. I've banked with Lloyds, or I've banked with my high street bank for, since I was sort of a teenager. Surely the British Bank must be for a kind of more complicated business than me. Give me a sense of the type of clientele who you've supported through, say, startup loan.
So startup loans, we've now passed 120,000 loans that have been provided. And the average loans for startup loans is around sort of £12,500. So small loans, that sort of early stage business. The thing about startup loans that I love, and it is the stories of the entrepreneurs, and it ranges from, at the one end of the spectrum, businesses that took a startup loan that are now, there's one that we know that's now valued at $1.2 billion. So, a startup loan, I think about 8 years ago, now worth, it's one of the unicorns, it's a unicorn. It's an over $1 billion value business. So huge economic success. Through to the other end of the spectrum, regularly we'll hear people sort of say, startup loans saved my life. It's not about creating a huge business, but actually, people that are at a particular point in their life or a particular situation where employment wasn't for them, or for whatever reason in a difficult space, actually, but having an idea and the fact that frankly someone believed in them, backed them, allowed them to create something, hugely sort of impactful, and everything in between the two. But ultimately, our clients are people that have got an idea, that got that business sort of the concept, but don't have the sort of the capital to put in themselves necessarily, and need that support.
You're listening to Why Small Business Matters. Find out how Northumbria University can help your business thrive through the Help to Grow management program. Delivered by leading small business and enterprise experts from Northumbria University, with the support of leading figures from industry and experienced entrepreneurs. The program supports senior managers of small and medium-sized businesses to boost their business's performance, resilience, and long-term growth. The 12-week program is 90% funded by the government, and the fee payable by participants is £750, and has been designed to allow participants to complete it alongside full-time work. The in-depth, high-quality curriculum supports you to build your capabilities in leadership, innovation, digital adoption, employee engagement, marketing, responsible business, and financial management. By the end of the program, you'll develop a business growth plan to help you lead your business to realize its potential. To find out more about the program, the modules, eligibility, and fees and delivery dates, go to northumbria.ac.uk/help-to-grow.
This is Why Small Business Matters, and my name is Matt Sutherland, and today I'm joined by Richard Bearman, Co-Chief Banking Officer at the British Business Bank. Could you give us a sense of some of the successes, the big successes that you've had through through the support that you offer?
There are many, many, many big successes, and while I think some of the successes I'm most almost proud of being involved with are actually quite small scale in terms of their kind of economic impact. But we have had sort of some huge successes as well. The one that's probably most in mind is there's a sportswear brand that is sort of a global sportswear brand, I'd say now, that took a startup loan about 10 years ago. And they've just recently raised investment valuing the business at over £1 billion. So what's often called a unicorn business, and it's clearly that's very much one end of the spectrum. But it's amazing to think that startup loan played a part. Not the only reason, obviously, lots of other reasons why that business is successful. But that business needed some funds right at that early stage, and startup loans played a part in creating something that is now, as I say, employs many, many, many people and is, as I say, valued at over £1 billion. And actually in a sector, it's not a fintech sector. It's not like, it's not one of the sort of we get a lot of talk about these fast growth businesses being in certain sort of, fintech type stuff or what have you. This is sportswear.
It's not the nascent tech, is it? It's it's a really good example. Thank you. Thanks, Richard. Can you tell us really, in its purest sense, Richard, what is a startup loan?
A startup loan is actually for not just a startup. It's for a startup and early stage business. So any business up to 3 years old can access a startup loan. And it's essentially kind of simple product. It's up to £25,000. It's actually a personal loan for business purpose. So we're lending to the individual for them to put into their business, up to £25,000. And essentially, it's a flat rate. It's a 6% fixed. So it stays at 6%. There's no fees. And essentially it's that provision of funding to either get a business off the ground, or actually if there's something that's already started, still in its early stage, if it kind of needs that funding to allow it to grow or allow it to develop, to provide that support, that funding. But startup loans is also just as importantly about the support. So the entrepreneur gets what we call pre-loan support. So once they've applied, that they get a business advisor. So a person will spend the time with them, really working through the business, making sure the business plan, the cash flow works, making sure that it's well thought through. Partly, ultimately, to protect us, because it is a loan and it's public money, to make sure there's a good chance of that business being successful and that the loan will be affordable, but also for the entrepreneur to help them work through that business plan to make sure that the business is viable and actually also that they're going to get what they need out of it. We spend time sort of saying, okay, what do you personally need to be able to draw from this business? Let's make sure that we've captured all of that. And then they also get post-loan support. So once the loan is drawn down, there's a whole range of support that that the entrepreneur can access, from sort of training programs through to mentoring, and to really just give them every chance of success.
Closer inspection of the lending figures shows that a vast proportion of your lending goes outside of the immediate London and South East area. What do those figures look like, and how do we compare up here in the North East?
No, you're absolutely right. So around 69% of our lending is outside London and the South East. Obviously not saying London and the South East aren't important, but it is important for us to make sure that we've got that full national coverage. So we have a sort of specific partners in all regions and nations. So to make sure we've got that local knowledge and local expertise and that local focus. So absolutely, it's important to us. I mean, Northeast, so startup loans have provided about £59 million of debt loans into the Northeast. So I think it's about 6,200 or so loans over its existence. And we constantly, know we need to do more to make sure the regions and nations outside of London South East get the support that we need. But I think we're in a pretty good place. So yeah, it's good, but could be better.
The British Business Bank has just celebrated its 10th year anniversary. What next? Where is it going to be going in the future to better support small firms in UK PLC?
There's a lot more for us to do. So we need to sort of continue the good work we've been doing. But I think there's the opportunity to scale and to do more. We spent quite a bit of time talking about startup loans, but as I said earlier, there's a full range of different product areas. And in the sort of the more investment side of the bank, you might have heard of British Growth Partnership, which is very much being built out at the moment. But essentially, this is part of how we can potentially use pension funds to ultimately to invest in fast growth businesses. So that's an area where we're doing something sort of different. Really, that's one of those classic things where we're trying to catalyze the industry to sort of create a more of almost like a market and an interest in how pension funds can, as I say, support small businesses. But just generally for the bank, it obviously working with government. It depends on sort of governmental decisions about areas that they want to support, but there's huge potential for us to do more, to support more, and ultimately to back more businesses in the UK.
Just reflecting on the discussions from today, Richard, and the vast experience that you have in this sector, what would be your 2 or 3 takeaways that you would offer to small firms listening to this podcast?
I think there's sort of 2 or 3 things. I think for small businesses or for entrepreneurs, there's the things that I've seen that have helped people be successful. I think there's something that I regularly kind of observe, which is that a small businesses that think like a big business. So it's about that mindset. And I think some of those successful entrepreneurs, even though they might just be just them, or it might just be them and a couple of people, they're already starting to think like a big business. And what I mean by that is things like, a big business has a board, they've got advisors, they can afford all sorts of departments and everything. But small businesses that almost surround themselves with that sort of quasi board. It's like, what expertise do you surround yourself in? If you're not an expert in marketing, who do you know that's an expert in marketing that could just give you that advice, be your quasi board member? So starting to think like a big business, even though you're small. And there's lots of little examples, but I definitely think the mindset of thinking like a big business, even though at that point in time you're small. I think then from a finance perspective, I think something that quite often where people make a mistake early on in business is when it comes to finance, almost grabbing the first bit of finance that's available. And I think it's really important to make sure that you understand that there is a range of different products. There's loads of different financial products out there. And it's trying to make sure that you're matching the right finance at the right time with the right need. So it's kind of, what do you need the money for? And quite often that will lead you to the answer of, okay, what's the right sort of finance? So, if it's a car that's needed, for example, or a vehicle, actually there's specialist vehicle finance, which is much better suited to that rather than taking an overdraft and using that. And it's sort of making sure that you understand the range of finance and match the right finance to the right need at the right time. And then possibly the sort of third thing is then when you actually end up in the position of looking to raise finance, and of course online, a lot of the time it can be online, but quite often there are people involved. And, for startup loans, we have those business advisors and there's human beings in there. So be it a startup loan all the way through to if you're raising investment from VC or whatever it may well be. But if there's people involved, just remember that there is as much investing in you as they are the business. And although the business plan and the details, the facts and figures are really important, just remember that ultimately people are people and they want to see the passion, the energy, the commitment. And that's important to get across. And if that's not, some people, that's not them, they're not great at that. What, bring someone in that is, and have a partner or have someone there that can get that kind of, that dynamic nature. Because as I say, whenever you're going to sign on the dotted line to lend money, you're taking a bit of a risk yourself as the lender. And so you want to have that sense of, here's someone that I can almost be passionate about and actually be proud that I've supported a business. So remember that personal side of borrowing money is as important as the sort of the facts and the figures and the business plan.
If you were starting a business tomorrow, what would be the top things on your to-do list to consider?
Good question. Well, I've always felt myself as a sort of frustrated entrepreneur or always someone that's never quite had the courage to do it. I love working with entrepreneurs. I really do get a lot of passion and energy from spending time with entrepreneurs because I do have those ideas and I've never had the confidence to do it. And so I think if I was to do it, it would be, it's almost recognizing that you're making a big step and having that confidence to do it. But what would be the first thing I'd do? I'd actually talk it through with my wife, partly because she's far brighter and sharper than I ever am and can sort of usually see through the answer. But I think that probably is the key thing. The first thing it's for an entrepreneur is have someone around or have more than one person around that really knows you, that can challenge you. There's nothing worse than people saying, oh, it's a great idea, sort of willy-nilly. You really need someone that's kind of puts it to the test and kind of let's work it through to make sure that it is viable, that the business really does have life. And be it your wife or friend or someone, but someone that is not just going to agree because, they're just being nice, someone that really will put that idea through the ringer, make sure it works, think about the possible sort of challenges and issues. And then you've got the confidence kind of, you know what? Yes, this is doable. This is workable. It's got life to it, and off you go.
And Richard, where would people find out more information about startup loans?
Ultimately online. So you can either go in via the British Business Bank sort of website and find us there, or you can go sort of direct to sort of startuploans.co.uk. We have a number of partners out across the country. So we have regional partners and specialist partners that are out there providing that business advice. And so you can also access them through sort of regional partners across the country, but fundamentally through the British Business Bank, or just search up Startup Loans.
Richard, we really enjoyed having you on the podcast today, exploring, of course, the world of finance and startup loans. But thank you very much for your time. Very, very much appreciated.
It's great to spend some time with you. Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
Thanks to Richard Bearman, our guest on today's episode. Don't forget to check out some of our previous episodes covering topics such as tech and embracing tech in a non-tech business. And with Kevri, 3 female entrepreneurs starting up an edtech business. You can find out more about the Help to Grow management programme by visiting northumbria.ac.uk/help to grow. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time on Why Small Business Matters.